I traveled here with the daughter of my first love from the future. She told me that in the future, I not only abused her but also cheated on her father with another man. Later, I abandoned both my husband and daughter to run off with a wealthy man. So, she'd rather erase herself from existence than let me end up with my first love. I couldn't help but laugh bitterly as I watched her desperately try to match my first love with another girl. She didn't know that I had already foreseen the future. On our way home from school, my first love and I were dragged into a small alley behind the school by a girl. The girl was very pretty, but she wasn't all there. She kept insisting on calling me and Damon Mom and Dad. I was silent for a moment, then reached out to feel her forehead. "Are you okay?" I asked. She impatiently swatted my hand away, then turned to Damon, eyes brimming with tears. "Dad. Everything I've said is true. I'm your future daughter." Damon gave her a speechless look and said, "If you're sick, go to the hospital," before pulling me away. But the girl quickly grabbed the hem of his uniform and said rapidly, "Is your phone password Camilla's birthday? Do you have a diary where you write down her likes? Are you planning to confess to her on her birthday?" I froze, glancing quietly at Damon. I saw the usually proud boy's face flush red. He shot a quick glance at me, gritted his teeth, and said, "How do you know that?" The girl looked pleased with herself. "Because I'm your most beloved daughter." I hadn't noticed before, but now I carefully studied her delicate features and realized her eyes looked very much like Damon's. Suddenly, I asked, "What's your name?" The girl didn't seem to want to talk to me and answered dismissively, "Layla." Hearing that name, my heart skipped a beat. I had once imagined that if I ever married Damon and had a daughter, I'd name her Layla. Looking at her lively expressions, a feeling of bittersweetness stirred in my heart. Without thinking, I reached out to touch her hair, but she dodged away. As her eyes swept over me, there was clear disdain in them. "Dad, stop liking Camilla, okay?" Her voice was filled with genuine hatred. "You're so good to her, but she's never satisfied. In the future, she'll not only abuse me but also cheat with a rich man. When you find out, they'll even hurt you." Both Damon and I were stunned. Perhaps Layla's words were so sincere that Damon, without realizing it, was pulled into the emotion. He instinctively refuted, "That's impossible. Camilla's a good girl." Layla, shaking her head in disappointment, said, "I've crossed over from the future. I know exactly what kind of person she is. Right now, you like her so much that you're missing out on your true love." Damon was about to argue with her when a soft voice came from the mouth of the alley. "Damon?" Damon's face instantly turned cold when he saw who it was. But Layla's eyes lit up. "Tessa?" I followed their gaze and saw Tessa standing at the alley entrance. She was wearing an oversized school uniform, her thick glasses nearly covering half her face. When she spoke, she not only had a strong accent but also revealed the braces on her teeth. The first time anyone saw her, they'd think she was unremarkable. But this Tessa had done something most people couldn't even imagine. She had confessed her feelings for Damon in front of everyone during the school basketball match. At that time, Damon had politely rejected her. But that event became a topic of gossip among the students, with everyone secretly mocking her for being delusional, ugly, and dreaming too big. Everyone thought Tessa would give up, but unexpectedly, she didn't. From then on, whenever Damon was around, Tessa's figure could always be spotted. Eventually, Damon grew tired of her persistence, started giving her the cold shoulder, and even occasionally mocked her. Yet, Tessa never left. She still chased him. At that moment, Damon didn't show her any kindness, pulling me along as he tried to leave. But as we passed Tessa, she grabbed the sleeve of his uniform. Damon frowned at her hand. Tessa immediately released it and carefully took 2 movie tickets out of her bag. "Damon, can I treat you to a movie this weekend? Consider it my way of thanking you for helping me last time." Tessa came from a poor family, and her strong accent made her an easy target for ridicule at school. At first, it was just verbal abuse. But after her confession to Damon, she had completely enraged a girl in school who secretly liked Damon. The girl, along with her little group, started bullying Tessa. When Damon found out, he gave them a serious warning, and that's when they stopped. Damon didn't take the movie tickets from Tessa. Instead, he raised an eyebrow and asked, "You can barely afford your tuition, and you're wasting money on movie tickets?" Tessa's face turned red, and she mumbled, "I earned this by doing part-time work." Damon was taken aback for a moment, then awkwardly looked away. I'm busy. This weekend is Camilla's birthday. As Damon pulled me out of the alley, I looked back one last time. I saw Layla stomping her foot in frustration, while Tessa was staring intently at the hand Damon had around mine. In her eyes, I saw strong jealousy, resentment, and even hatred. I couldn't help it. Damon and I had grown up together. Not only had I spent so much time with him, but our backgrounds and looks were also a good match, so I was often used as a tool to humiliate Tessa. But I didn't like it. After warning them multiple times, they finally stopped comparing me to Tessa. Tessa had come to me once. She told me that I was just lucky. If she had the same family background and looks, she would be standing by Damon's side too. At that moment, I was thinking about the solution to a math problem in my mind, but I still smiled and replied, Tessa, instead of saying all this to me, why don't you go home and do more practice? Since you can't change your natural gifts, it's better to work hard to change your future. Unfortunately, Tessa misunderstood my words and thought I was mocking her grades. From that day on, she started to dislike me even more. My thoughts returned to the present, and we had reached the building downstairs. Before parting, I asked Damon what he thought about Layla's situation. He scoffed and said, she thinks that just because she looks a little like me, she can try to take advantage of my future daughter? Then he glanced at me, his ears turning slightly red, and our future daughter wouldn't talk behind your back like that. She'll be well behaved, just like you. My heart felt warm, and I couldn't help but think, maybe I was just overthinking things. Could time travel really be possible? Perhaps that name was just a coincidence. After today's strange events, I had a bizarre dream that night. I dreamt that I was sitting in front of a strange vanity table, holding my phone and about to send a message. I saw a message from someone named Jack, come with me. And the message I had already typed but hadn't sent yet was, okay. It all felt so absurd, and as I looked up, I accidentally made eye contact with my reflection in the mirror. My eyes were still beautiful, but there was a deep exhaustion on my face, as though I had gone through some kind of hardship. But before I could take in the surroundings, my alarm clock went off. It was time to wake up for school. I sighed, thinking to myself that I must have lost my mind. This weekend, my friends gathered to celebrate my birthday. After we had dinner, we were planning to move the party to another location. I was both looking forward to the birthday gift Damon would give me and wondering if he would confess to me today. But Damon was clearly distracted, glancing at his watch from time to time. When the thunderstorm hit outside, he stepped out to make a phone call, and when he came back, he was still in a daze. My earlier excitement quickly faded by half. I really wanted to ask him, didn't he say he didn't care about Tessa's invitation? So why was he acting like this now? My best friend, Rory, noticed the tension between us and immediately picked a duet for us to sing, teasing us into performing together. Damon snapped back to attention and smiled gently at me. May I have the honor of inviting the princess to sing a song? This was a game we used to play as kids. Damon would pretend to be the knight who killed the dragon, and I would play the princess who was kidnapped. Every time he saved me, he would shamelessly ask for a kiss. My mood improved a little, and I nodded. But just as Damon and I were halfway through the song, someone suddenly burst in. It was Layla. I looked at her drenched clothes and felt a strange sense of sympathy. Ignoring the surprised looks of everyone, Layla hurried over to Damon and said, Dad. You have to go save Tessa. She's been caught by her father's creditors and is in danger. Damon froze for a second. Before Layla could react, he rushed out immediately. For a moment, my mind went blank, but my feet betrayed me, and I followed him out. The rain was pouring outside, and I struggled to keep up with Damon, shouting his name. But he never turned around, running faster and faster. Suddenly, I tripped and fell to the ground, my calf scraping against something sharp. Blood dripped into the cold rainwater, quickly disappearing. I gritted my teeth and stood up, cursing Damon for being crazy and not bringing an umbrella. But then I realized I didn't bring one either. Sighing, I thought, I guess I'm just as crazy as he is. But when I reached the movie theater, I realized the only one who was really crazy was me. I watched as Damon knocked down the debt collectors, then saw him pull Tessa into his arms, holding her tightly. In the end, I saw him take off his jacket and cover both of them before they ran off together. Suddenly, an umbrella appeared over my head. I froze, looking up to see Layla standing next to me. Her face was blurred in the night, but her tone was mocking. You saw that, didn't you? That's my dad's true love. What are you? I didn't care about her words and asked her in return, aren't you cold? Layla froze. She stared at me for a long time before forcefully shoving the umbrella into my hands. You're such a fool, she said, then ran off into the heavy rain. I stood there, holding the umbrella, feeling lost. The warmth from Layla's hand still lingered on the handle, but with the cold wind blowing, it quickly faded, just like my mood, slowly turning cold. At that moment, an unfamiliar car pulled up beside me. The window rolled down, and I saw Rory's face. Get in, she urged. My clothes were soaked from the rain, and I hesitated, worried about dirtying the car seat. But Rory was already impatient, so I opened the door and got in. Thanks, I finally came back to my senses. Rory, sounding irritated, said, do we really need to say thank you? If you're going to thank someone, thank my uncle. He came to pick me up, or else I wouldn't have caught up with you. I quickly turned to thank the middle-aged man in the driver's seat, but Rory burst out laughing. You're mistaken. He's our driver. The one in the passenger seat is my uncle. Confused, I looked at the young man sitting in the driver's seat. From this angle, I could only see the tense side of his face. Thank you, I said, feeling a little embarrassed. The young man didn't seem pleased. His voice was cold, it's fine. Rory winked at me and whispered, don't mind him. He's like that with everyone, always walking around with a face as if someone owes him 8 million. I bit my lip, unsure of what to say, but the young man in the front seat spoke up, his tone slightly impatient. Rory, if you don't want me to tell my brother you failed your exam, keep quiet. Rory stuck her tongue out at him, about to say something, when she noticed my leg was still bleeding. Ah. What happened to your leg? Why is it bleeding so much? I was about to say it was nothing, but Rory's uncle immediately told the driver, take her to the hospital. At the hospital, the doctor carefully cleaned the wound on my leg and prescribed some medicine. While Rory went to get the medicine, her uncle and I waited in the lobby. The lobby was crowded, and there was no place to sit. My leg ached from standing, so I could only lean on one foot. At that moment, an arm suddenly extended in front of me. I was startled and looked up to see the young man from earlier. He wasn't looking at me, but his voice was a bit awkward. You can lean on me. I wasn't embarrassed. I thanked him and leaned on his arm. After a while, he suddenly spoke again, Camilla, do you really not remember me? Under the light, I could finally make out the whole face of the younger uncle from the Xia family. His eyebrows and eyes were like an artist's finely crafted masterpiece, delicate and perfect, but his pitch-black pupils seemed incapable of reflecting any light, always carrying a sense of cold indifference. I searched my memory carefully but realized that aside from Rory, I seemed to have no connection with him at all. And Rory didn't often talk about her family. I didn't even know her younger uncle was so young until tonight. So, I looked at him in confusion. The man lowered his gaze, seemingly disappointed, and said, I was the third speaker for the opposing side in the debate competition last time. It suddenly clicked, I remembered the debate competition from last year, when our school went up against theirs. The third speaker on their side didn't speak much, but each of his words hit the point directly. Of course, I didn't back down either, and in the end, the debate turned into a showdown between him and me. I recalled that the third speaker's name was. Tentatively, I called out to him, Jack? The young man finally smiled, as though the ice and snow were melting. But I couldn't bring myself to smile, because I suddenly remembered that dream. Jack, wasn't he supposed to be my affair in the future? When he dropped me off at home, Rory pulled me aside with obvious concern. What's going on between you and Damon? I remembered Damon running off with Tessa, and the image of his back made my heart ache as if pricked by needles. I forced a smile at Rory and told her it was fine. But only I knew that I had begun to feel a sense of crisis about Tessa, the girl I had once paid no attention to. Maybe it was because I got wet in the rain, but that night I developed a high fever. Dizzy and feverish, I had another strange dream. The room was dim, with no hint of sunlight. I was lying on the floor, watching Damon, who looked noticeably more mature than he does now, walk out of the room. I didn't know how much time passed, but someone pulled me up. Their hand was noticeably smaller than mine, but the palm was incredibly warm. She took me downstairs and pushed me into someone's arms. The scent of faint orange blossoms filled the air in that embrace. For some reason, it gave me an inexplicable sense of comfort. When I woke up again, 2 days had already passed. My mother was sitting by my bed, her face full of worry. Only after I told her I was fine did she finally relax and hand me the porridge she had made. As I ate, I noticed a beautifully wrapped box by my bedside. My mother told me, "I don't know what's going on with you two. The moment you came back and collapsed, Damon showed up, looking all disheveled. He knew you had a fever and stayed by your bed to take care of you the whole night. No matter how much we tried to send him away, he wouldn't leave. He left this box for you as a birthday gift." I remained silent, not saying a word. When my mother went to wash the dishes, I opened the box. Inside was a finely crafted necklace. The crystal swan on the necklace sparkled under the light. It was the necklace I had noticed when I went out with Damon last time, but I hadn't bought it because it was too expensive. I remember I didn't show much excitement about it, just sneaked a few more glances at it. But how did Damon know? The next day, as soon as I stepped out the door, I saw Damon standing at the entrance. He smiled at me cautiously and handed me a cup of soy milk. But I didn't take it. I walked past him, heading downstairs without sparing him a glance. Damon quickly followed me, attempting to take my bag. Of course, I wasn't going to give him my bag, so we ended up tugging at it on the street. In a fit of frustration, I let go, and Damon lost control, falling onto his bottom. I couldn't help but laugh. Seeing me laugh, Damon immediately jumped up and came close to me, speaking softly, "I'm sorry, I was wrong. I shouldn't have left you there last time, and I should have heard you calling me. I'm really sorry. If you're still mad, just hit me. But please, don't ignore me. I can't stand it when you don't talk to me." His face even showed a hint of grievance by the end. I stared at him for a while, and then spoke in a cool tone, "But I saw you hugging Tessa." Damon immediately became anxious, grabbing my sleeve and explaining, "I saw she was really scared, so I just wanted to comfort her. I don't have any feelings for her, really." Seeing my expression grow colder, Damon grabbed my hand, his voice pleading, "I really was wrong, you know, I've always liked you, and I want to marry you." I froze, because this was the first time Damon had ever said such a thing to me. In the past, though we both understood each other's feelings, there was still the gap of an official confession. I had always wanted to hear him say he liked me, but now that I finally heard it, I didn't feel as happy as I imagined. Maybe it was because of what happened that day. I sighed and didn't answer. I just turned around and walked away. Damon followed me, holding my bag. This was the first time we walked to school without any playful bickering. When we reached the school gate, I saw Rory just getting out of the car. When she noticed the strange atmosphere between Damon and me, she wisely didn't ask any more questions. I linked arms with her, but just as the car door slammed shut, I caught sight of Jack sitting inside. His eyes were still cold, especially when he saw Damon by my side. The displeasure practically radiated off him. I suddenly became curious. How did my future self and Jack get to the point where we were running away together? Time passed quickly. Damon and I seemed to have returned to our usual state. Maybe it was because we had been together since childhood, and we had long since woven each other into the fabric of daily life, so it wasn't so easy to break away. But I clearly felt that my feelings for Damon were slowly fading. When did I realize this? Probably when Tessa stopped coming to school for a while. I noticed Damon often stared absent-mindedly at the door during breaks, and after basketball practice, he would subconsciously look for someone in the crowd. He even wrote Tessa's name on a piece of paper, but after finishing, he angrily crumpled it up and threw it away. Habits are terrifying things. For example, I had gotten used to Damon always being by my side, and Damon, by now, had gotten used to Tessa following him around, impossible to shake off. I looked at his conflicted and confused expression and really wanted to tell him, "If you care that much, just go find her." And my feelings aren't something cheap either. Once Damon has used them all up, I'll turn and leave without a second thought. Even though I thought this, I still felt a pang in my heart. The change happened one afternoon. At that time, I was reading under a gardenia tree beside the school playground when Damon stormed up to me, visibly angry. As I recall, he rarely got angry with me. The few times he did, it was because I ignored his advice and got hurt. But this time was different. It was because of Tessa. Damon threw Tessa's diary at my feet and demanded, "Camilla, why did you say those things to her?" He looked at me with utter disappointment. "I've explained it to you already. I don't like her." Tessa has already distanced herself from me, so why are you still humiliating her behind her back? I quietly watched Damon lose control, then bent down to pick up the diary. But as I read, I couldn't help but laugh. Tessa wrote that I not only humiliated her behind her back, but shamelessly kept chasing Damon, even instructing others to bully her. She even mentioned the time we met alone, when I told her to go back and do her homework. She wrote, "A careless word from someone standing high above makes the already muddy person in the dark feel even more worthless. Perhaps I was never meant to live in this world." I tossed the diary back at Damon, speaking calmly. "Do you really believe what she wrote?" Damon leaned against the tree and sneered, "Does it even matter if I believe it? Camilla, Tessa's suffering from depression. Who would joke about something like that?" I didn't answer. Instead, I stepped forward and slapped Damon across the face. Damon froze for a moment, then grabbed my wrist, his voice harsh. "Camilla, if you've done something wrong, you need to admit it. I used to tolerate your little tantrums, but this is different. This is a matter of life and death. Let's go, you're coming with me to apologize to Tessa." I tried to shake off his hand but couldn't, so I used my other hand to slap him again. "I didn't do any of that. Believe it or not, if you want me to apologize to her, then maybe in my next life." I turned to walk away, but tears were already streaming down my face. How did things get to this point? Damon started showing up at Tessa's house every day, claiming he was going there to take care of her and apologize on my behalf. When I heard about it, I felt so disgusted I nearly threw up. I know Damon too well. He was just using me as an excuse, finally able to visit Tessa openly without hiding anymore. Damon's family lives right upstairs from mine. Occasionally, on my way to school, I'd bump into him on the stairs. Every time, he would look at me like he wanted to say something but hesitated. I knew what he was after, a truce. But I thought he was delusional, still unable to let go of Tessa, and unwilling to leave me behind. Purely ridiculous. That day, I was at home, studying, when my phone started ringing incessantly. I opened the messages and saw a bunch of photos of Damon and Tessa. In the photos, Damon was smiling at Tessa gently, his gaze full of emotions he probably didn't even realize. And Tessa, as if knowing these photos would get to me, smiled provocatively at the camera from a position Damon couldn't see. So, where exactly did she seem like someone suffering from depression? I clenched my phone tightly, waiting for the other person to send another message. Luckily, they sent one soon after. "Goodbye, your 17-year-old true feelings," the message said. "Next, I'm going to tell Damon the truth, and he'll leave you for good." It was Layla. I didn't care too much, though I was curious, just how unworthy of me was my future self, that Layla would disappear just to stop me from being with Damon? Her efforts weren't in vain, though. It seemed like the ending would play out exactly as she wanted. But still, every time I thought about Layla disappearing, my heart ached strangely. Was it really blood ties pulling at me? Layla worked fast. The next day, after school, Damon pulled me into an empty classroom. Of course, besides me and him, Layla and Tessa were there too. Damon didn't waste words. With red eyes, he came straight to the point. "When we were kids, spending the summer at my grandmother's in the countryside, I accidentally fell into a deep pit. Who saved me that day?" I was taken aback, only then realizing what he was referring to. It was that incident. At the time, Damon had just started middle school. On his way to school, he had a car accident, leaving him unable to stand for a long time. During that period, his temper grew worse, and he'd throw things in anger over the smallest frustrations. No one wanted to be around him, not even his parents, who avoided him as much as possible. But I was just too naive, thinking that Damon was just too sad, that if I stuck by him long enough, he would eventually get back to the gentle Damon I knew. So, I put up with his bad temper and started helping him with rehab every day. Sometimes, I'd tell him jokes to cheer him up. And, of course, I made sure to explain all the school lessons to him. During that time, I took double the notes. But Damon remained moody and distant. It wasn't until we went to his grandmother's house in the countryside during summer break that things started to change. I remember, that day, for some unknown reason, he insisted on pushing his own wheelchair outside. When evening came and I hadn't seen him return, I went out to look for him. I found him lying beside a deep pit. I immediately called his name, and he slowly came to his senses. When he saw me, he pulled me into an embrace, tears filling his eyes. I'll listen to you. I'll live well. At that moment, Damon was looking at me, full of pain, silently begging for an answer. I said, I don't know. All I saw was you lying by the pit. Tessa, on the other hand, was crying as she looked at me. You're lying. You lied to Damon. If it weren't for you, how could he have forgotten me for so many years? I thought he always remembered me. I stared at them coldly and said, word for word, say that again, but I really don't know who saved him. Damon woke up on his own and didn't say anything, so how could I know what happened? I mocked them, and I never said I was the one who saved him. Whatever he imagined, that's on him. I'm not interested in stealing someone else's things. Enough. Damon finally couldn't take it anymore. His face was full of disappointment as he looked at me. All these years, it turns out I was in love with the wrong person. I stayed silent for a long time before suddenly laughing. Damon, I'm curious. Even if a dog had passed by and saved you back then, would you have fallen for it? If so, your love must be pretty cheap. Cheap enough that he didn't deserve me. Layla was right, it was time to say goodbye to my 17-year-old true feelings. In the end, Damon dragged a sobbing Tessa out of the room. I just leaned wearily against the wall, my mind in chaos. Suddenly, I heard a soft sound behind me. I turned around immediately to find Layla, who had been forgotten by everyone, standing in the corner, her nose bleeding profusely. I was so scared I almost called for an ambulance, but she held my hand to stop me. Reluctantly, I took her to the bathroom to clean up. After we left the school gate, I noticed Layla standing there, staring off into space. Something about her made my heart ache inexplicably. Without thinking, I turned back and walked up to her. Want to stay at my place tonight? I asked bluntly, and she hesitated before answering. But thankfully, she agreed. When we got home, my parents had already made dinner and were sitting on the couch waiting for me. I told them Layla was my classmate and would be staying over tonight. They both had no problem with it and even pulled Layla into a conversation, clearly liking her. For once, I saw Layla, the sharp-edged girl, quietly behaving in front of them. Then, my mother suddenly said, now that I think about it, Layla's nose and mouth, they actually look a bit like yours. And that mole between her nostrils, you used to have one, but you got it removed. I froze for a moment and looked at Layla, who was also gazing at me with a complex expression. At first, I only noticed how Layla resembled Damon, but now, I saw some features that looked like mine. The feeling was indescribable. Besides my parents, it turned out there was someone else in this world who was blood-related to me. To avoid my parents suspecting anything, I took Layla back to my room after dinner. Perhaps it was because Layla was sleeping beside me, but that night, I had an incredibly long dream. In the dream, Damon and I were married. He still spoiled me like he did when we were kids, treating me like a fragile treasure. We had so many sweet moments, just like I used to imagine, forever in love. But then, we had our first fight after marriage. It was because he didn't want me to go back to work after we had a daughter. We argued terribly, so much so that our parents got involved. For many days after that, Damon didn't come home. In the end, he apologized first. He told me he was upset because he didn't want me to be so exhausted, taking care of the baby and working at the same time. He said he could support us both, and all I had to do was be his princess. I softened and agreed to stay at home for good. At first, Damon came home on time and brought me all kinds of gifts. But gradually, he came back later and later, and sometimes I could smell unfamiliar perfume on him. I grew suspicious, so one day I decided to surprise him at his office. That's when I saw Tessa clinging to his arm, laughing and talking. In the dream, Tessa was no longer the shy girl from high school. She had taken off her thick glasses, put on makeup, and looked confident and elegant. When they saw me, they both panicked and moved away. Tessa tried to greet me, but I ignored her and looked at Damon. Damon was obviously flustered. After he got rid of Tessa, he pulled me aside and tried to explain. At first, Damon had felt guilty toward me, but over time, he became more impatient and even started comparing me to Tessa. He said I wasn't as strong or as confident as Tessa. That was when my mother was in the hospital, and the stress was overwhelming. His words broke me, and I completely collapsed. That was also when I met Jack. He was my mother's doctor. He told me that Camilla is Camilla, and there's no need to compare her to anyone else. Just that one sentence was enough to pull me back from the edge. At the end of the dream, I saw Jack reach out his hand to me, saying, "I've always been here. If you turn around, you'll see me." This dream felt so real that it made me start to believe that this might just be the slightly tragic future awaiting me. When I woke up, I still had traces of tears on my face. Looking up, I saw Layla sitting at the table, staring blankly at a photo of us. In the photo, I was smiling brightly, holding my parents' hands. "Layla, why did you lie to me?" I suddenly spoke. Layla was startled, then froze, staring at me in a daze. I forced a bitter smile. It was Damon who cheated, not me. Layla suddenly stood up. "How did you know?" I didn't answer her. Instead, I stared at her panicked eyes and spoke each word carefully. "Why did you come back? Do you really hate me that much? Would you rather disappear than let Damon and Tessa be together?" Layla lowered her head, hiding her expression, but her voice trembled slightly. "Yes, I hate you the most." With that, she ran out of the room. My fingers clenched in pain as I struggled to understand why she would do this. Damon and Tessa are together now. When I heard this news, I was at Rory's birthday party. I made up an excuse and slipped out of the bustling front hall. The pitying looks from everyone made me uncomfortable. Who could have guessed that Tessa, whom they had once looked down on, would actually end up with the school heartthrob? And that too, after Damon had me as his first love. Without realizing it, I found myself in the small garden, just in time to see Jack sitting on the swing, reading a book. A breeze ruffled his bangs, revealing his always calm eyes. There was also a box of candy on his lap, which looked like he'd already eaten most of it. I couldn't help but smile. This young master actually had a surprising contrast to him. Maybe hearing the noise, Jack looked up. When he saw me staring at his candy and smiling, his ears suddenly turned red, but he still pretended to remain calm. "Want some?" I nodded, took the candy from his hand, and sat down on the swing next to him. Suddenly, I remembered that dream. I asked him if in the future I become unnoticeable, lose my shine, would anyone still like me? I knew my question sounded odd, but Jack still answered seriously. "Of course they would." My heart raced, and I asked, "Why?" Jack smiled, and that smile was like a brilliant star shining in the dark. I'll never forget the first time I saw Camilla. Her confident and calm eyes. During the debate, even though our side was losing, she still stood her ground and voiced her opinions. Even though we lost, she earned everyone's applause. I always believed that someone like her could never become ordinary. Even if there's a temporary setback, she'd definitely pick herself up and find her own shine again. Jack looked into my eyes, his voice gentle, "But actually, even if many people love you, it's more important to love yourself first. Never doubt yourself because of what others say." A warmth surged in my eyes, and my heart felt lighter. Looking up at the bright blue sky, I whispered, "Thank you, Jack." Besides the gift, I also invited Rory to the amusement park. The two of us had an absolute blast, and we were in high spirits. On the way home, the driver came to pick us up, along with Jack. Rory had to leave early for a private birthday dinner her parents had prepared for her. I felt bad for making them drive me home, but Jack suddenly put a bunny headband on my head. "Come on, it's no trouble." But as soon as we reached my building, I saw Damon, and next to him was Tessa. They were standing close to each other, talking sweetly. Just as their lips were about to meet, Damon suddenly saw me. For some reason, he pushed Tessa away and seemed at a loss. Tessa's face immediately darkened, but she quickly linked her arm with Damon's, giving me a challenging look. "Well, what a coincidence, Camilla." She glanced at Jack beside me, then froze, her eyes filled with complicated emotions. "Found someone new already?" "Well, I guess it's good, so you can stop obsessing over someone else's boyfriend." When Damon heard that, his eyebrows furrowed deeply, and his tone suddenly turned cold. "Who is he?" I didn't want to bother with them, but I couldn't help but feel disgusted. "What does it have to do with you? And stop meddling in my affairs." I raised an eyebrow at the twisted expression on Tessa's face. "I'm afraid your girlfriend might not like that." With that, I turned to leave, but Damon stopped me, insisting that I explain. Jack immediately stepped in front of me. He was half a head taller than Damon and looked at him with a fierce gaze that gave off an intimidating aura. Damon couldn't stop me anymore, but watched me reluctantly as Jack playfully flicked the bunny ears on my head. "Let's go up, little bunny." My face inexplicably flushed as I quickly went upstairs. Later that night, Damon knocked on my door. Outside, he had his usual smile on, his tone light. My parents aren't home tonight. Can I come in for dinner? If it were before, I would have happily pulled him in, but now, looking at his face only made me feel repulsed. Damon, don't you find this funny? Don't tell me you're with Tessa now, but still can't let go of me? Damon kept his smile, but a flicker of pain crossed his eyes. So, we can't even be friends anymore? No, I said firmly and slammed the door shut. But after a while, I opened it again. Damon's previously dim eyes lit up, and he was about to say something when I threw a box at his feet. This is everything you've given me over the years. Take it back. I don't need it anymore. Damon froze as he looked at the items on the floor. He bent down and picked up the topmost box. When he opened it, inside was a crystal necklace, the swan pendant still sparkling. He asked, "What about this? Don't want it either? You used to, like it so much." I looked at him indifferently and replied, "Things are different now. It's dirty." The Damon who would know my every thought just from a glance was gone. He would never know how badly I wanted to grow old with him back then. As I closed the door, I saw Damon clutching the necklace tightly, his face filled with confusion and pain. It seemed like my life had returned to how it was before. Except now there was no Damon, and there was Jack instead. Jack would drop me off when he picked up Rory, and he would invite me to the library to study on weekends. Finally, when Jack invited me to the library again, I couldn't help but ask, "Jack, are you chasing me?" Otherwise, with his personality, he wouldn't be so proactive in inviting the same person all the time. He looked at me, confused. "Yeah, isn't it obvious?" I was speechless. Who has dates in a library every time? And every time, he would debate math problems with me so seriously, it only made me think he saw me as a rival in studies. I sighed, stood on tiptoe, and whispered in his ear, "How about we go to the beach next week? I heard there will be fireworks at night." Jack's face immediately turned red. He bit his lip, nodded earnestly. I smiled in satisfaction. Just as Jack dropped me off at home, a heavy rain began to fall. Looking at the downpour, I thought to myself, I haven't seen Layla in a while. Or maybe, she's still here. A sense of loss surged in my heart, tinged with a faint bitterness. "Camilla." The voice suddenly came from behind. I turned around and saw Damon. He had a sorrowful expression, but his eyes were filled with joy. "I broke up with Tessa." I paused for a moment, then replied coldly, "It's none of my business." "You don't have to tell me." I turned to walk upstairs, but Damon suddenly hugged me from behind. The faint smell of alcohol lingered in the air. I frowned and said, slightly disgusted, "Damon, let go." His voice trembled with emotion. "I was wrong. I just realized, I've always liked you. I can't stand living without you. Can you forgive me?" By the end of his words, he was sobbing uncontrollably. But I wasn't moved at all. Instead, I stepped on his foot hard. As he let go in pain, I stood on the stairs, looking down at him. "Honestly, your behavior right now is both crazy and disgusting." Thinking about the things that were likely to happen between him and Tessa in the future, I felt a deep hatred towards him. "Damon, maybe I should even thank you for leaving me." I didn't look at his grief-stricken expression anymore and turned to leave. But unexpectedly, I caught sight of a familiar figure in the pouring rain. I was eager to see her face clearly, but in the blink of an eye, she disappeared. I smiled bitterly. Had I been thinking about her too much lately? Damon had been caught by Tessa's family, who had been chasing him for money. They were clearly seeking revenge, so they treated him harshly. He was struck in the head and had to be rushed to the operating room. When my mother told me the news, I was discussing with Rory about where to go on vacation this summer. Looking at the red light above the operating room, I thought of the message Damon had sent me just a few hours ago. "Summer's almost here, how about we go to the beach together?" Since that one meeting, he had messaged me every day, but I never replied. I even blocked him. He didn't know, but I already had someone else to go to the beach with. Damon's parents were sitting on the benches outside the operating room, crying. My parents were comforting them, tears in their eyes as well. I absent-mindedly stared at the hospital's white walls, silently wishing Damon wouldn't die. Although I hated him, I didn't want him to die. Suddenly, at the end of the hallway, I saw Layla in a white dress. I walked toward her, and she took my hand, showing me a gentle smile I had never seen before. "Mom, today's my birthday." Can you make me another birthday cake? I froze, staring at her expectant eyes, and finally agreed. After leaving the hospital, I quickly went home and made a small cake for Layla. The soft candlelight blurred her features, making it hard to read her expression. But then she suddenly spoke. I was the one who told them where Damon was. She looked up. I'm the one who got Damon into the hospital, his life hanging by a thread. I stared at her, overwhelmed with so many questions I wanted to ask. I wanted to ask, hadn't she always been helping Damon? Didn't she always hate me? Why was she doing this now? But in the end, I just felt exhausted. Everything Layla did, every word she spoke, seemed impossible for me to understand. Maybe I had spent too much energy today, because I ended up falling asleep at the table. And for the first time in a long while, I dreamt about the future. But this time, it was all about my daughter, Layla. I saw her as a newborn, her big, grape-like eyes wide open, smiling at me. I saw her at 5 years old, holding a clay cake and singing happy birthday to me when Damon had forgotten my birthday. I saw her at 10, proudly raising an eyebrow at a parent-teacher meeting and saying, I have the best mom in the world. I saw her at 13, holding a knife and glaring at her father after Damon found out that it wasn't me who saved him back then, and slapped me for Tessa. Finally, I saw her at 15. She went to the hospital to find Jack, looked at him seriously, and said, if you ever treat my mom badly, I'll make sure you regret it. Jack, dressed in his doctor's uniform, didn't laugh at the somewhat childish statement. Instead, he bent down and extended his pinky finger. I understand. Let's make a pinky promise. Layla reached out her hand, linked her pinky with his, and smiled brightly. After leaving the hospital, she purposely found a quiet spot, took out an old, outdated phone. Alright, if you really can send me back to the past, then take me back to before my dad confessed to my mom. Miraculously, the phone spoke. As you wish. But why didn't you just tell your mother about the future? Why choose to tear them apart by making her dislike her? Layla seemed lost in thought for a while, then smiled. You don't understand. My mom is the kindest and softest person in the world. If I couldn't make her hate me from the start, she would definitely stop me. She might even walk down the same path again for me. At that moment, I finally understood Layla's biggest secret. She loved me. She had always loved me. Tears suddenly welled up in my eyes. I reached out, wanting to grasp that daughter of mine in the illusion, but I could only watch her getting farther and farther away. Choking up, I asked, Layla, would you still want to be my daughter in the next life? She looked at me, smiling innocently. Of course I would. Layla may not be a kind girl, but to me, she's always been the perfect daughter. I shook my head, forcing a smile. I'm sorry, and thank you. When I woke up, I looked at the empty seat across from me, tears streaming down my face. I knew that this journey through time about love was over. The doctor said that while Damon's life was saved, it was uncertain whether he would ever wake up. They told me that when he was brought to the hospital covered in blood, he was still clutching the crystal swan necklace tightly in his hand. I listened, staring blankly at the sky for a while. In the distance, Rory waved at me, smiling. Come on, let's go to the beach. Beside her, Jack also looked at me, his gaze gentle. I stood up and ran toward them. Let's go. The second year, I arrived at our graduation. As the midsummer was fading, I walked into the university campus again with them. 4 years later, I graduated with honors from the University of Political Science and Law and smoothly became a successful lawyer. And Jack and I got married, with both of our parents extremely pleased. My greatest joy was teasing Rory into calling me auntie. She would always chase after me, complaining about when exactly I got on Jack's pirate ship. In the 3rd year of our marriage, I got pregnant. Jack was very respectful of my opinions. He told me that if I wanted to continue working, I could; if I wanted to stay at home, I could do that too. Without batting an eye, he told me, if it comes to that, I'll quit. Anyway, with Rory handling things at the company, I'd be happy to be your personal stay-at-home husband. When Rory overheard this, the two of them once again caused a big ruckus. When I was 7 months pregnant, I heard from my mother that Damon had woken up. She said, you were together for so many years. If you have time, you should go visit him. I was silent for a moment and nodded. I found some time over the weekend, and Jack and I went to the hospital, where we unexpectedly ran into Tessa, who we hadn't seen in a long time. I remembered that at the time, the school had to expel Tessa because her family's creditors were constantly causing trouble. I heard that she didn't take the college entrance exam and instead went to a small city to work and pay off debts. Looking at Tessa now, she was wearing faded, old clothes and holding a little boy, looking exhausted. But when she saw me, she still showed that same resentful expression from before. "Camilla," she said, clenching her fists. "Why? Why do you get all this good luck? Why isn't it you who's fallen from grace?" I couldn't help but laugh. During the time when she should have focused on studying, she was busy fighting with others over Damon, letting her education slide. Now that her life wasn't going well, she turned around and blamed others for being lucky. I didn't think there was any need to engage with her, so I held Jack's hand and walked away. When we reached Damon's hospital room, I saw him staring blankly at the sunlight outside the window. Time had left its marks on his face, but the gloom in his eyes suddenly disappeared when he saw me. He trembled as he called out, "Camilla." I had completely let go of the past and nodded at him. But as soon as the corners of his mouth lifted slightly, he saw Jack behind me, and then his gaze dropped to my rounded belly. Damon looked at me with sadness for a long, long time. Finally, he closed his eyes and softly said, "I wish you happiness." I placed my hand on my belly and smiled at him from the heart. "Thank you." 3 months later, I gave birth to a daughter. Her eyes were as bright as stars, small and curled up in Jack's arms, making the usually cold and serious man soften his expression. But when I saw the small mole on her nose, my eyes suddenly filled with tears. End.